Okay, hello everyone out there in LinkedIn land. So it's Wednesday afternoon once again. So I'm glad you could join me. Hope everyone's doing well. So this is the part where I ask if you're hearing this and you're seeing me okay. If you can just type okay in the chat box, just to let me know that that's all set up well. Give me a sign of life. Also, I'd like to know where you are in the world, especially if you're from outside Australia. I'd like to get a sense of what the international footprint of this LinkedIn Live broadcast is. So, if you can type the country where you're located into the chat box, that would really be interesting for me too. So the format, as per usual. So I'm going to go through a presentation with you, and there'll be opportunities um, within that presentation for you to ask me any questions if you have. Also, at the end, uh, there'll be a time for a Q&A as well. So, but if you have any questions, don't be shy. Just pop them in, and I'll be happy to answer them as we go. So I've got maybe some bad news and some good news for you. So the bad news first. So I said at the beginning of these LinkedIn broadcasts that I was going to try to do them every Wednesday for as long as I can. I'm probably at the point where I'm going to maybe slow that down a little bit, and at this stage I'm thinking of maybe doing every second Wednesday. So that's going to be a little bit more sustainable for me. It takes time to prepare these things. Um, so so I'm not going away, but I'm just going to be slowing down the pace a little bit. That's the bad news. The good news is that I want to try to launch a LinkedIn newsletter in the coming weeks. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but LinkedIn has a feature where when you publish an article, so not a regular post, but a LinkedIn article, which is usually like long form content, you can choose to publish that as a newsletter to anyone who has opted in to receive it. So I talked at length about newsletters last week. So it's time to eat my own dog food, as they say. But it's something I've been wanting to try for a while. So I'm going to maybe add that to my own content mix. Now this is being recorded and will be published on YouTube as well. So usually I publish these on the Sunday evening following. So if you are watching this on YouTube now, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel so that you will be notified when I add more content like this one. All right, so as I said, so if you're getting this, please pop an OK in the chat box. So give me some confidence that this is going out loud and clear. All right, so today we're going to talk about content marketing and how to attract patients with your content marketing strategy. So here I'm talking about if you're an optometrist, if you're an ophthalmologist. Recently, I've been connecting with more and more audiologists as well. So all you guys have patients, and so content marketing is something that I think you should be putting some attention towards. Because it is an important part of the overall marketing mix. So I'm going to talk about the 5 reasons why you need to create content and how that drives patient growth. I'll talk about what types of content work best for eye care practices, but all healthcare practices in general, and how you can create that content. And why done is better than perfect. I think this is an important concept to talk about. How that consistency of publishing builds your audience. I'll talk about how AI can and can't really help you to create content faster. I mean, there are some ways that you can use AI, and there are some ways that you shouldn't. So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit. And also I'll talk about some simple ways that you can turn your content into social media content. You can feed your email marketing campaigns. You can use content to support your SEO strategy. So I also mention all of that, and so I realize that also creating content takes time. So I'll give you some tips on how you can really, take some of the burden out of that process. So who am I, first of all? Well, so my name's Paul Salloway. So I started digital marketing back in 2008. I've worked with WordPress websites and SEO mostly since then, but in December of 2022, I launched Optics Digital Marketing, and this is an agency which works currently with eye care practices in Australia and New Zealand. And I've published a number of articles on My Vision magazine, which you can check out. I think there's another one coming up at the end of this month. So in the time since I launched Optics Digital, I've worked with a number of clients in Australia, one of which was a contact lens specialist practice. We managed to increase their web traffic by over 60% in the space of a year. We worked with another client which specializes in ortho K fittings. We managed to double their web traffic within 4 months. Another practice is moving into dry eye specialization. And so we were able to double the traffic to that website within a month. So that was really spectacular. And another practice, we achieved a 10x increase in traffic over a course of 18 months working with them. So if you want to learn more about those case studies, I recommend that you go back and watch the first LinkedIn presentation, which I gave 6 weeks ago. So what is content? Well, my definition of content is like anything original that you put out into the world, whether that be in the form of text, video, audio, graphics, and it's anything that really hits one of the 3 E's, if you want to put it that way. So it can be something that educates, something that entertains, or something that emotionalizes. Okay, so it's the 3 E's. So educates is probably one that we're pretty familiar with. So anytime you publish a blog article or a Facebook post that gives tips, 3 ways that you can tell if your child has binocular vision dysfunction, something like that. You're helping your patients to learn something about their condition or a member of their family's condition. So that's quite popular content there. So I think entertaining is another very, very popular form of content. I think it's actually the hardest to make, though, because when it comes to comedy, for example, I think that that's an art form that not many people have mastered. But so you don't have to be you don't have to be a comedian necessarily to create entertaining content. I'm one thing I will say about Specsavers is they do make some good ads sometimes. So I was watching one on YouTube just yesterday. That's where a woman, she goes into a cafe, looks like Starbucks, and she goes into Starbucks, and there's a man sitting at this table, presumably her husband, with another woman. And she comes in and she says, "How dare you do this?" and throws coffee in his face. And then across the room, there's another guy. He says, "I'm over here, dear." And she's like, "Oh, yeah." And then, of course, at the bottom it says, "See Specsavers today." So that's a fun little commercial. So that's the kind of thing that entertains people. And that's another category of content. And the last one, so this is what really gives social media a bad name, I think, is the emotionalization, because I think a lot of people get sort of tempted by the dark side here, and they intentionally go for things that are going to get people riled up and angry and upset. so those are all powerful emotions, but you don't have to go the negative route. So like something that causes surprise, something that causes people to be inspired, something that causes people to be nostalgic. I mean, those are all emotions as well. So generally, any kind of original content that fits into one of those three buckets is probably going to do well. So what are some approaches that you can take for creating this content? Well, myth busting is always good. Challenging existing beliefs, which can sometimes be the same thing. I mean, a few optometrists out there, I'm sure you've had the experience of, like a parent will come in and you might say to them, well, I think your child has myopia. And they might say something along the lines of, well, okay, so they need to wear glasses, big deal. What's the problem here? I wear glasses, right? But of course, there's a whole lot more to that. And there's like, long-term eye health issues related to myopia. So through your content and through your content strategy, you can challenge some of these existing beliefs, challenge some of these myths or existing, misconceptions that people have. Storytelling, so storytelling is always a great way to connect with an audience. So if you've got some sort of anecdotes, maybe about somebody that you've helped or something that happened in your practice, something that happened to you, maybe. Storytelling is always good. Behind the scenes, like, I'm telling my clients all the time, just grab your smartphone, like take some photos of you and your staff having a lunch meeting or something. Take some photos inside the practice of, maybe somebody's giving you a gift basket, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it's showing people behind the scenes. You're giving people a chance to look behind the curtain. You're sort of like dropping the barriers a little bit. And especially on social media, people eat that stuff up. So anytime one of my clients posts something like that, they always get a ton of likes and shares and comments. So, if you're thinking about doing something like that, then I think, you definitely should. Listicles. So this means like a list of, like five best ways to avoid dry eye this winter, something like that, right? This is anything that just gives a list of tips is always common. It's always commonly a good successful piece of content. Simplifying complex ideas, especially through using metaphors, that always works really well. One of my clients, he says that when he's talking to his patients about keratoconus, he says and he pulls out a soccer ball and says, okay, your cornea is mostly, it's a little bit of exaggeration, but it's kind of a spherical shape like this. And he pulls out a Australian rules football. He says, but if you've got keratoconus, your cornea has more of a pointed edge to it, pointed shape to it like this. So by using metaphors like that, you can really take complex ideas and make it easy for people to understand and make your skills and your experience a lot more accessible to people. Seasonal topics, as going into spring. So spring, a lot of people have allergies. In the winter, we've got a lot of people, that's when dry eye is more prevalent. You got the back to school period at the end of January, February. You've got like end of the year where people need to use their health insurance benefits, all those sorts of things. So these type of seasonal topics are always a good idea for content that you can create. User generated content is good as well. I think it's a little easier to do with the retail side of the business, like with the frames that you're selling. So with a couple of clients that I have now, we're running patient photo contests for them. So if their patients come in, what they can do is just take a selfie. Well, they don't actually have to do it at the practice. They can do it anywhere, but they can take a selfie and then upload that selfie to a contest page, and then get their friends and family to vote on that selfie. And at the end of the period, the end of 3 months, whoever's got the photo with the most votes wins a pair of designer sunglasses. So that's content that your patients are creating for you, and it's quite powerful because it's authentic, and you get this sort of like a virality effect where people are telling their friends and family about your business that way. So user generated content also a good approach to creating strategy. A good strategy for creating content. All right. So what are the 5 biggest reasons you need to create content? Well, I think number 1 is patients need information, okay? And they're going to get that information. If not getting it from you, they're getting it from your competitor. So when it comes to healthcare, it's not like calling a plumber if you've got a blocked drain or something. I think especially for complex or expensive treatments or products, people want to do some research. They want to do their due diligence first and find out, like, is this really for me? What's it going to cost? How long is it going to take? Are there any side effects? There's a whole range of things that people want to know first. And so it's not realistic to expect that they're going to pick up the phone sight unseen and order something or book in for something that's quite complex, I think. So it really helps if you've got some content in place that can educate your patient base and potential patient base about these things. So having content on your site that really explains all of the range of things that you do is going to help a lot. Content builds authority, and authority builds trust. And trust, as I said before, is the currency of modern business. So people are, they're going to trust you a lot more if they can see that you've taken the time to create really comprehensive content around one of your services. Like if you really go into detail explaining something, you position yourself as the teacher, as the voice of authority, then that's going to generate authority and trust, which is what you need. The third reason is the familiarity principle. Okay, so there've been studies done on this. They call it the mere exposure effect. So the more people are exposed to something, the more times they see or experience something, the more they get to like it. Okay, so probably we've all had this experience of being in a work environment with someone that perhaps we didn't like very much in the beginning, but over time, because we're bumping into them and rubbing shoulders with them in the lunchroom, we sort of get to like them after a while. So it might be, hey, Bob's a bit of a jerk, but he's our jerk. So that's the familiarity principle. So by turning up in people's inbox on a regular basis, by turning up in their in their YouTube channel subscriptions, by turning up in their social media feed, people over time they get used to seeing you, and that's also part of building the know, the like, and the trust factors. So visibility. So it won't matter how good you are as a practitioner, and it won't matter how much you could help patients if they don't know you exist. So I mean, let's face it, the internet is really just a collection of content, a collection of knowledge. But if you're not contributing to that, worldwide knowledge base, then you don't have a seat at the table. So you need to be creating something in order to get visibility, to actually be on people's radar. And I think the fifth reason that you should be creating content is through differentiation. I mean, if you're doing something and somebody else down the street is on the surface at least doing the same thing, then how is a potential patient supposed to know who they should go to first, right? But content gives you an opportunity to really explain what that difference is. I mean, like take an example of a client of mine. So they do scleral lens fitting, and he has in his practice a scleral topographer, and so not many practices have that. I think he might be the only one in his city actually that has one of those devices. So, but if you just say that, that's not going to really mean anything to most patients. So through your content, you can explain that, well, with one of these, with this piece of equipment, we can make sure that you get a good fit the first time for your scleral lens, and you don't have to come back for refitting and so on. So you can really start to explain the benefits to patients of what you do and how you do it, and how you're different from others. So differentiation. So that's the fifth reason why I think you should be creating content. So does that make sense, what I've said so far? If this all makes sense, can you type a 1 in the chat? Just type the number 1. Just let me know if this is hitting the mark. Just type number 1 in the chat box. Or if you have a question, drop in the question. Okay, so what types of content work best? Well, I think blog posts are that's the original. When the internet got started, I mean, people started blogging way back when, before video was a thing even online. And blog posts are the cornerstone of SEO, search engine optimization. Search is still the dominant paradigm of how we locate information online. And so Google uses text information, text on your website, text on your domain. That's one of the primary things that they use to decide, okay, we're going to show this website to this person searching for this thing, and not somebody else. So speaking about myth busting and misconceptions, I sometimes get the impression, talking with clients, that they think SEO is all about sprinkling some sort of pixie dust on your website, and then you're magically going to be top of the search results. But in reality, if I had to put a number on it, I would say that 80% of search engine optimization comes down to building content, building good, high value, good user experience content. So I think blog posts are the cornerstone of SEO for that reason. Video. So I think we're living in the age of video now. So long form, what I'm calling medium form, short form, live broadcasts like the one I'm doing right now. So these different formats all appeal to different audiences. People consume these types of videos at different times. So if you've got a few minutes to kill, and you're just looking for something to fill in some bored minutes in your life, you might scroll through some short form videos. If you're trying to solve a particular problem, like let's say you just want to solve a problem that's very specific and solve it quickly, you might look for a how-to video, right? Like how to insert scleral lenses. Okay, so that's probably like a 5-minute video, maybe that would be a good piece of content that somebody could get. But longer form is also, I think it's making a real comeback. So when I say longer form, I'm talking about like videos of 30 minutes plus. I know a lot of cases, like when I'm settled in for the evening and I want to use that time productively, I'm looking for longer video pieces where I can actually listen to a comprehensive presentation or debate or lecture, demonstration of something. So long form video content also has its place as well. And so I think if you can cater to all of those video formats, that's great. But in particular, I think short form is sort of like the flavor of the month. And short form videos is a great way to get noticed, to get to that initial brand awareness. So TikTok was really the I think the pioneer of short form video, and we'll see what happens with them over the next few weeks. They might be going away. I don't know, but if they do, then there's always Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, and so on. So short form as a video content format is only going to keep growing. And so I think if you really want to future-proof your brand, then you should have some sort of you should be thinking to create some sort of video content, because like with AI, which we're going to talk about shortly, with AI, the barrier to entry for people to create text content is a lot lower than it ever was before. So if you really want to stand out, then video is still an opportunity for you to do that, because AI hasn't convincingly been able to replicate what humans do yet. Well, it's getting there, but I think we're not quite there yet. So audio. So simply audio. Podcasting is a lower barrier to entry alternative to making videos. So if you're the type of person who feels a bit uncomfortable getting in front of the camera, fine. I think we've all been there. But podcasting is a much easier first step. With podcasting, you don't need to worry about lighting. You don't need to worry about backgrounds. You don't need to worry about so many things. Podcasting, all you really need is a smartphone, because there are some apps now where you can record your podcast directly on your phone and then upload it. Simple as that. If you want to get a bit more advanced, you can do it through Zoom. I still do this. So I have a podcast, the Dry Eye Treatment Podcast, which please check it out if you're interested. Always looking for guests, by the way. But I interview people. I interview practitioners on Zoom, record those interviews, and then the audio part of that recording goes into after some basic editing, goes into the podcast channel. So I actually wrote an article about this on My Vision just recently. So if you go to myvision.com.au, go to the My Business section of their website, you'll find this article there. I'll drop a link in the show notes as well. But in this article, I give you some more detailed help on how to get started with podcasting. And graphics. So whether that's like a high quality infographic, if you get onto Fiverr, Fiverr, you could hire someone for $50 who'll make a very decent graphic. You just tell them what you want them to create, you give them all the information, and then within days they'll turn out a very nice looking infographic that you can use on your social media channels and so on. Use it on your website. Memes are always fun. Again, it gets back to that entertainment thing. So I used to, when I was doing blog posts, I would often drop one of those animated GIFs or GIFs. Pronounce it how you like, but you know what I mean. So I always used to put one of those animated GIFs in there, just to give the blog post, make it a bit more entertaining, I guess. Because there's no reason why we can't have fun while we're doing this. Animated videos, that's another one. So there are some apps that you can get hold of now to create simple animated videos. So I've got one I haven't used for a while now, but it's called Toonly. I think it's Toonly. And you can use it to make sort of animated cartoon type videos, which could be useful for explaining something. thumbnail carousels. We've all seen those on Instagram, and that's a popular format as well. So they can all of these formats can be used to educate, to entertain, or to emotionalize whatever message that you're trying to present. Right. So AI. So unless you've been under a rock for the last couple of years, you may have noticed that AI is a big part of our lives now. So Chat GPT has kind of taken the world by storm, and there are a bunch of other large language models, these LLMs as well, like Claude. I think Perplexity is another one, and there's a few of them. DeepSeek, the Chinese one, but anyway, so Chat GPT is probably still the most popular one. And I think you should be using Chat GPT or some similar AI tool to help you produce your content, just to make it more efficient. So these type of tools are great for doing research, like rather than spend hours combing the internet for articles for a particular blog post that you might be writing. You can ask Chat GPT, okay, find me 10 articles about this topic that were written within the last 2 years, for example, and it'll go out and do it. So you can save a heckle of a time doing research. It'll help you to structure, your blog posts. It'll help you to structure maybe the script for a YouTube presentation. It's good at doing that as well. And I often use it for suggesting improvements. So like if I'm creating an article about something, I'll upload it to Chat GPT and then say, okay, analyze this post and then give me some suggestions on how I can make it better. And it'll come back. And now, like, I don't always follow the tips it gives, and I disagree with some of them. But I find that it is helpful to have like a second opinion on what I'm creating, even if that second opinion is a machine. So definitely, I think you should be using tools like Chat GPT to make your content creation process a lot more efficient. But I think it is a mistake to rely too heavily on them. So sometimes they still produce factual errors. So I remember once I was not that long ago, I was doing an article about FL41 lenses, the lenses that help with migraine symptoms. And Chat GPT was telling me that blue light has been proven to reduce the symptoms of migraines. And I thought, really? I'm sure it's the other way around. I'm sure that blue light makes the symptoms worse. So I asked ChatGPT, can you go back and check on this? And then it turned around and said, oh yes, that information was wrong. And so you've got to fact check what it tells you. Like any kind of statistics, I always ask it to come back with the actual source and keep prodding it until you get a URL that takes you to the source of this information, because it does sometimes make things up. What they call it hallucinates facts. So yeah, so you have to be careful about that. And also, like, it's hard to get the machine to write in the the right tone or the right voice that sounds like it's coming from you. So like, if it'll either sound too academic, or it'll go the other direction and just be too sort of, I don't know, too slapstick. So you can sort of craft a prompt for ChatGPT to get it to sound more natural, but still, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that it reflects the way that you would speak with someone. If somebody was sitting across a table from you, in a cafe, for example, and you were explaining a topic to them, you want to make sure that it sounds like the words that would be coming out of your mouth. And as I was just sort of explaining, sometimes it just sounds inauthentic. Like ChatGPT, I've noticed there are certain phrases and expressions that it loves using, and so often now I can look at an article online and I can tell just from reading it that yep, this was produced by ChatGPT. so it's a good tool, but don't rely on it 100% for producing your content. And chatbots, so we've all seen these probably now, where if you want to ask a question about let's say about a business, like like how much do Tom Ford frames how much do Tom Ford frames cost in your practice, and you can type that into one of these chatbots, and it'll come back with an answer. So with these types of tools, you need to train them. You need to feed them in lots of information about your business, and then I think they can do a really good job. And I think they're going to become a standard feature of most websites pretty soon, I feel. But there are still some limitations which you have to recognize, which are that, first of all, they don't do anything for your SEO. It doesn't. You're not impressing Google by having one of these on your site. So it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all in that regard. And secondly, it's not really. It's like having a chatbot on there doesn't present your personality to anyone visiting your website. Okay, so people want to do business with people, and so if they're just asking questions to the machine and the machine's feeding them back answers, that's good, but you're still not making the type of connection that's going to lead to them choosing you, I think, in the future. So again, they're good, but just recognize the limitations. So is that making sense so far? If that all makes sense, type a 2 in the chat box so I know before we move on. Or if you have a question, drop that as well. So speaking of Google, so they recognize that this barrier to entry for creating content is much lower than it used to be. And they realize that there are people out there who are using AI to produce content at scale. However, because of the nature of how these language models work, a lot of it is just regurgitated. What's already out there. They're not adding anything new to the sum of human knowledge or experience. So since 2022, Google has been putting more and more focus on promoting content in search results, which they say offers a positive user experience and are considered helpful, relevant, and trustworthy. So these are what they call Google's helpful content updates. And just as I speak, actually, there's I think just this week they're rolling out another one of these helpful content updates, and that sometimes causes fluctuations in people's rankings in the Google search results. So when they first started doing these, a lot of these people I mentioned who are using AI to produce like hundreds and thousands of AI generated blog articles, overnight their websites just kind of tanked. So they started getting like almost no traffic at all. So Google wants to see information, as I said, that is helpful, relevant, and trustworthy. And that's particularly the case when it comes to what they call your money or your life topics. So anything related to finance or related to health, they pay extra attention to making sure that it's coming from a trustworthy and credible source. So what are some practical ways that we can build, or what are some practical ways that we can make helpful content? And here I'm talking mainly about written content, blog posts, etc. So I think using anecdotes. Okay, so as I said, anecdotes, storytelling, very powerful way to communicate a message. Of course, when it comes to patients, you should try to anonymize it, I think, for privacy reasons. But anything that is coming from you in the first person voice, talking about your experiences or your experience working with a patient, Google sees that as helpful, relevant, and trustworthy. Using original data if you can. So this could be something as basic as like doing a simple in-house survey of your patients. Ask them their preference, or ask them, just ask them what interests them. So, for example, if you ask your patients like, why haven't you tried contact lenses up until this point, right? And so they might come back with answers like, well, I've got dry eyes. 2, it's cost reasons. 3, I just don't like touching my eyes. There's a whole range of answers that they might provide you, and that would be really interesting, original content that you could use in like a table format on a blog post. Something that doesn't exist in the world yet, something that you can provide. So I found social media to be actually a good source for this type of thing. So with Facebook and with LinkedIn, you can create polls. So you could create a poll. You could poll your Facebook subscribers, poll your Facebook followers. Hey guys, what do you think about this? And get their responses, and take those poll results and use that as original data for a blog post. Again, this is helpful, relevant, and trustworthy. It's the sort of thing that Google's going to like. Linking to credible sources. So like if you're talking about, if you're writing an article about, strabismus or something like that, why not link it to an article on WebMD, or why not hyperlink to something on like the Mayo Clinic? That shows that you've put some time into researching this. So you're providing like additional evidence to support whatever you're saying. So I always try to link out to at least 1 or 2 high credibility sources like this when I'm creating content. Give a point of view. So it's most of the time ChatGPT is not going to give you its point of view about anything. It's going to take very sort of like middle of the road positions on any question that you ask it. But by adding your own personal point of view to a topic, this is something, again, that's very original. For example, I was talking with a client a few weeks ago, and we were talking about warm compresses, for dry eye, and he said, like, a lot of people will tell you that warm compresses are good for dry eye, but I don't recommend it to my patients, and this is why. Okay, so he had a point of view on that topic, and he explained that point of view very well. So this is the kind of thing that you can also do. Present existing data in easy to understand ways, right? So through Google, even, I think that they have ways that you can search all the academic papers around a given topic. But the problem with a lot of these papers is, they're only of interest to other academics. But if you can sort of pass out some of that information and put it into a simple table using everyday language that people can understand, it's not your original data, but you are presenting it in an original and helpful way. So this is also something that we try to do with when we're creating content, is try to present tables, because people love tables. It's an easy way to get your head around an idea. Rich media, like adding video, especially YouTube, because YouTube is owned by Google. Video is, it's people love video. It's easy to consume. If somebody's watching a video, that means they're on your page longer than they otherwise would be, and that's a signal to Google that they're getting value from your content. So again, something else that we do when we produce content is try to find a relevant video to embed on that blog post. Quizzes, polls, like I just talked about, surveys where you're asking people to, what their opinion is about certain things. These are all interactive elements. This is adding to the user experience. Author bios. So, Google, as I said, Google wants to see that the content that they are ranking highly comes from a credible source. And so if you've got an author's bio at the end of every piece of written content explaining who you are, what your credentials are, link it to your LinkedIn profile is also a good idea. So this is another way that you can really add credibility. This is another like trust factor. It's something that's going to help you in terms of creating content that's helpful, relevant, and trustworthy. Keep it current, so like we live in a fast changing world, and the medical space is no different. So like if you've written an article, if you wrote an article 2 years ago about a topic, well, maybe things have changed since then. Like there are new types of contact lenses coming out all the time. There are new myopia treatments being researched all the time. I was just reading the other day about how red light therapy. There's some evidence now that really helps with myopia control. So go back and update your old posts, right? Don't just consign them to the garbage bin that just because you wrote them 2 years ago. No. Go back, review them, see if you can update them with new information, with the latest information. I think you should probably spend half your time actually revise, especially if you've got a lot of posts out there already. You should spend probably half your time just reviewing, revising, updating, and improving your existing content. So make sure your website loads fast. Make sure that it's mobile friendly. These are kind of table stakes nowadays. This is what people expect. And the last point I'll say here is write for your readers, not for your grade 12 English teacher. Okay, and I'm not saying that you should forget about typos and misspelling. I mean, that's not good. You don't want to do those. Please proofread and spell check everything. But in terms of like, when you're at school, you're probably taught that you should write in paragraphs. Each paragraph has like a few lines that are coherently explain an idea. Well, I think that was probably good for your English class, but if you're creating content for online, people find a wall of text kind of intimidating. So simple sentences, like don't be afraid just to write one sentence at a time, especially like in emails, like especially if you're doing some sort of email marketing. Just simple sentences, one after the other, clearly spaced. It comes across as much more conversational, and it's much easier for people to consume. So it'll make your grade 12 English teacher cry, but I think that's how you should approach writing content. All right, so I want to talk about this concept of done. Done is better than perfect. So perfectionism is the enemy. Perfectionism. So many people don't start things because they're afraid, I'll make a fool of myself. It won't be perfect. People will laugh at me. People pick holes in my work, so I'm just not even going to try, right? The first time you write a blog post, it's going to suck. The first time you make a video, it's going to suck. Trust me on that, it will. That's okay. And think about it, right? Nobody expects you to be a Hemingway. Nobody expects you to be Spielberg when you're just starting off these things. Now, of course, there are people out there with, with disagreeable natures who are going to maybe troll. That's just a fact of life. But I actually have a more positive view of humanity, which says that most of us are really more supportive than that. And I think that most people care more about the content value than production quality. So if you're providing good content in an authentic way, I think that matters much more than whether your content has all the bells and whistles. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And the more you do something, the more repetitions that you get in, the better you're going to get at that naturally. Anyway, so there's a story which I think really illustrates this well. So it comes from a book called Art and Fear: Observations on the Perils and Rewards of Art Making, David Bales and Ted Orland. So I think this was in maybe New York years ago, where there was a ceramics class, a pottery ceramics class, and at the beginning of the course, the teacher said, I'm gonna divide the class in two, and half of you will be assessed at the end of the term based on how much you produce, like how many pots you can churn out, simply on weight, nothing more. I'm going to bring in my bathroom scales and we're going to weigh how much pottery you've turned out. With the other half of the class, he said, okay, your task is to create one perfect pot, one perfect piece of ceramics, and that's what you're going to be assessed on. So the interesting thing is that at the end of the course, the half of the class that was churning out volume, their work was actually much better, much higher quality than the other half, which was supposed to be looking at quality. And that's, not instinctively what you'd expect, but just that act of doing something, going through repetitions and learning how to do something a little better each time, you naturally will improve. So practice and repetition leads to mastery, not perfectionism. There's another story. There's another story that I think is relevant here. So the British cycling team, they were called Team Sky, and up until the year 2010, they had never won Tour de France competition. And they said, look, we want to change this. We want to win something. So they brought in a guy called, his name's Dave Brailsford. And so he kind of became their coach or performance director, I think is the exact title. And so he did all the kind of things that you'd expect, like, looking at individual training routines and looking at how they can make the cycles lighter. But he also introduced a philosophy that he called the accumulation of marginal gains. So what he was looking for is every time we practice, let's try and be 1% better than before. Every time we compete, let's aim for like a 1% improvement. So they looked at things like, what is the perfect tire pressure? Like what are the most ergonomic seats that we should be using? Even things like getting his cyclists to wash their hands properly so that they didn't get sick. They're getting them to figure out what were the best, or what were the ideal pillows to give them the best night's sleep, and they would take these pillows with them on when they went touring for competitions and so on. So all these little tiny things, they build up. They build up. All of these incremental 1% gains, they build up. And you do the maths on it. So if you can do something within every 5 days, if you can improve your performance by 1%, after every 5 days, at the end of a year, you'll be 10 times better than you were at the beginning. That's mathematical. So when it comes to creating content, so if you can try to just create, like, for example, with video, like thumbnails that are just a little bit better each time, video titles that are just a little bit better, the way you write a little bit better, the way you present on camera a little bit better, your editing skills a little bit better. Over time, just through this process of repetition, you can count on it. You can count on the fact that you will get better and better over time. So, but none of that's going to happen if you get held back by this idea that you need to be perfect the first time. So how do we use content for SEO, social media, and email marketing? Well, so I mentioned that content is the cornerstone of search engine optimization. Google wants to reward sites that have what they call topical authority. So any site that has a lot of that deals with a particular thing comprehensively, they're more likely to rank high for that. So I mentioned that we helped one practice which has a Ortho-K specialization to double their web traffic, and the way that we got there was by creating lots and lots of content around Ortho-K. So, this is what I'm calling, what I'm trademarking as the kitchen sink approach. So you throw everything except the kitchen sink at a particular topic. So think about, like, what are all the questions that somebody could ask if they wanted to know about Ortho-K? Like, what are the side effects? So, how do I insert them? How do I remove them? Are they for adults? Are they for kids? What's the youngest? What's the oldest age for this, type of contact lens? How much is it going to cost? All these things. So if you create enough content around a particular topic, then you achieve what Google calls topical authority. And so this is one of the routes to doing well through SEO. Now I see a lot of people who create excellent content on their website, but then they never share it through the social media, or they don't have a newsletter. They don't have an email newsletter to tell subscribers about it. So if that's you, then I'm sorry, but you're just leaving money on the table. You really are. So if you've gone to the trouble of creating content, you need to actually tell people about that. Don't rely on Google to put the word out there for you. You've got to actually share that post that you made through social media. Share a link to that video you've just published through your email newsletter. Whatever, you've got to get the word out there. There are tools available that you can use to turn this macro content into micro content. So, for example, we use something called Opus. It's a tool called Opus. So when we record a long form video, the video might be 45 minutes, say, or 50 minutes. So Opus can actually pull out like 10, I think up to 20 actually small, or 20 short form videos from that longer form, and using AI, and it does a remarkably good job of it as well, by the way. And it'll add in the captions for you, and you can add like B-roll footage, and you can crop it so it presents the speaker properly. It's really amazing. So, but the point is, we only had to record that master content once, and then there are tools available to take that macro content and turn it into micro content. ChatGPT now, so there's a Chrome extension that I've just started using, which is amazing. And what it allows you to do is, if I go to YouTube and if I click on any one of the thumbnails, a little icon appears in the top left corner of the thumbnail. And with this Chrome extension, it can actually download a transcript from that video into ChatGPT. And then while I'm there in ChatGPT, I can say, okay, ChatGPT, scan through this transcript and then pick out like one quotable moment from the whole video, and it'll give me a list maybe, and I'll choose the best one, and I can turn that into like a graphic. Take the text, maybe post it onto some stock image or something like that. So there really are lots of ways that we can take long form content and turn it into small, easily shareable content. I talked about podcasts before. So there are apps now that can take your long podcast and turn that into what they call audiograms. So that could be like a 30 to 60 second excerpt from the podcast. Or there might be one one particularly interesting part of your podcast that you want to cut out and share on social media to sort of like spark interest and curiosity about the longer form. So this is one way that you can really shortcut your content creation process, is by having tools that take the long form and repurpose it for shorter formats. Does that make sense so far? If that makes sense, I'd like you to type a 3. Can you pop a 3 in the chat window? Just make me know this is all landing home. All right, so takeaways and action points. So what can you do from having watched this presentation? Well, I'd like you to do a couple of things. So number one is, if you don't have a blog on your website, you should talk to your webmaster about that. Talk about adding one, and then write your first blog post. If you've got a WordPress website, it should be dead simple to do. WordPress started off life as a purely blogging platform, so it's like it's baked into the DNA of that software. So it should be pretty easy to do. If you have a blog, then I'd like you to go back and review the content and see if you can improve those posts using any of the tips that I provided earlier. Now, if you don't have a YouTube channel, I'd like to ask you to start one. At least register the account. I think it's a bit like registering a website domain. If you don't do it, somebody else may claim it in the future, and then you're going to be stuck maybe registering something less appealing. But I think that's something that's easy for you to go and do. And I want to challenge you to make one short form YouTube video that's less than 90 seconds every week for 6 weeks. Okay, so I know we're all busy, but I'm sure you can find 90 seconds in your week to record one video. Just grab your smartphone, find some place where there's good lighting, like outside. It's got natural light. That's usually pretty good. Just talk to your phone for 90 seconds or less about a particular topic. My phone's going crazy here. Let me just turn this off. Yeah, and then after the 6 weeks, I'd like you to take the best one. You can delete all the others if you really feel it's necessary, but take the best one and share it on Facebook or Instagram. And I guarantee, so I don't guarantee many things, but I guarantee if you do that, you will be surprised with how much traction you get in your social media. Like I said, people love this kind of authentic first person content. It's something that really presents you in a way that people can relate to. So that's what I like to challenge you to do. Make a video once a week for 6 weeks, and then at the end of that period, and I want you to upload all of them, by the way, but at the end of that 6-week period, take the best one and also post it onto Facebook or Instagram. All right, so that brings us to the end. So I hope that this information has been valuable for you. So if you'd like to get in contact with me to talk about your own content marketing strategy, you can do so through any of these channels. So you can go to my website, which is opticsdigital.net. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can email me or go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@opticsdigitalmarketing. And as I said, so like and subscribe to those videos, and then you'll be notified whenever I upload the recordings from these live sessions. All right, so does anyone have any questions? Anyone like to ask me a question before we wrap up here? So speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, all right. Well, that seems to be it then. So again, so I'm not sure when I'm going to do the next one of these. Probably in about 2 weeks. I have to think about the content of the next one. Okay, so have a good week, everyone, and bye for now. Bye bye.